Good evening, everybody. We are actually, for real, doing the Vaughn Akron Show number 22. It's been a long time since we've done one, but we'll go ahead and just get started on this. So we are living in a revolution, not a physical conflict, at least not to the scale of previous ones, but one much like the industrial or agricultural revolution. It may not feel like it. In fact, history has a certain way of compressing time. So, when you're in the middle of one of these things, it doesn't feel like you're in one. And it's sort of compressed just into one quick event when you read about it, in the history books, like the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, your various Bronze Ages. In fact, do you think people in the middle of the Bronze Age, identified themselves as such? This is the framework I'm using tonight to try to explain the baffling developments as of late, with maybe some sort of context, because it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So with that, I'd like to introduce my guest tonight. We have Corey Moore and Jake Digman, and you are both unmuted. Guys, it has been so long. And there is so much that has happened. So what are you guys up to right now before we even get into the news of the day and our theories and philosophies here?
Well, I'm kind of in the same spot I was the last time I talked to you guys. I've been just kind of like riding this out and see what's going on. I got a couple of kitties. Other than that, they take up pretty much most of my time. And other than that, I've been following all this stuff on social media and what's going on with the news and everything. But I learned a lesson a long time ago. I don't chime into very many arguments online, only because I don't get any satisfaction out of them at the end of the day.
Yeah, for real. And Corey, what have you been up to?
Trying to bet on my existential dread.
You and me both, buddy. So yeah, where do we start? Because the last show we did was like in spring, I think, like before, I started on all my projects. And I apologize, folks. I really slacked off. I got this program. I downloaded all kinds of things. I bought all kinds of things to like really make this a thing. And then I just sort of fell off the edge of the earth, and I apologize for that. But there has been so much that has happened. I guess, why don't we start with the most recent? And we can work our way back from there, because that's usually how context is important, right? So we'll work that backwards tonight. So did you guys both watch the presidential debate?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have a choice. I'm kind of a junkie for this stuff, and I had to watch it, but I probably shouldn't have. Blood pressure through the roof. What a mess. Have you seen anything like this? Actually, Jake, specifically, being involved with, entertainment sports, for quite a good portion of your life, even in those events, like when people are talking shit about each other, does it ever get quite that bad?
No, I never thought I'd agree wholeheartedly with CNN, but we happened to just be, CNN was the channel that was on that we happened to be watching the debate on. And as soon as the debate was over, when the host on the CNN, she goes, "Well, that was a total shit show. It's on cable. I can say this." I'm like, yeah, that sums it up about right. If obviously President Trump has no clue how a debate works. And I would dare say Vice President Biden didn't do much better either as far as a debate goes. No, that was just the interesting thing that came out of that was the amount of people I've seen that are now looking for other options because of how horribly bad that went.
I think we'll get into that too. But yeah, horrible. Corey, what's your take on that?
I'm gonna have to defend Biden. He was like getting punched in the balls the entire time, and I think the thing that pisses me off, a lot of people forget Biden has a stutter, right?
This is true.
And like, so people with stutters, it's really hard for them sometimes to articulate what they're saying. It takes a little bit of momentum. Sometimes they really just have to think, really get through it. And he does really well. I mean, in general, for someone with a stutter. But I think that's what bothered me. Like, Trump was just a bully, like he always is. And
Yeah.
I fucking hate bullies. I despise bullies. And honestly, I mean, yeah, it was pretty untasteful, some of the stuff Biden said, but like, I'm kind of like, yeah, go for it. Call him a clown. Tell him to shut the fuck up. Like, I wish he would have said, shut the fuck up.
I was waiting for it.
I was waiting for it to go there too. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I got, like, basically what happened is exactly what I expected to happen. I mean, I knew that Trump was going to talk over, and that's just his style. I wish that Biden was a little bit more clear. At least we'd have some, real contrast there.
Right.
And I get what you say about his stutter. He's also an old man. They're both old men. They both ramble on. And whoever is coaching Biden, by the way, and again, I don't have a dog in this fight, but, tell him to stop trying to cite like numbers and statistics, because that is going to fuck him up every single time. I mean, you can't expect him to do that. But yeah. And then what drives me nuts too is, next day I'm looking at all the comments, checking our local Fox 8 News and stuff. I can't help myself. I click on, let me read these comments. And it's a lot of the predictable shit. But one thing I didn't predict is one of the comments I made during the debate was that the clear winner in this debate was probably Wallace, because he was the most composed and articulate person involved in the whole thing. And then all these people are blowing up Wallace like he's an asshole and inept. And I'm like, what did you expect him to do? Like, they were like, well, he didn't know how to handle it. I'm like, he's not a priest. He's not a kindergarten teacher.
I mean, and that's what he sounded like. Mr. President, Mr. President, gentlemen, Mr. President, Mr. President. Like, how many fucking times does he have to tell him to shut up and follow the rules? I actually like that he literally brought up the contract. Like, you signed a contract. These are the things you stipulated.
Yeah, but that's a silly thing to bring up to the current president, because, I mean, he doesn't really care about contracts. We already know this. I mean, verbatim. Well, okay, not verbatim, but sort of to paraphrase him from quotes before about him not paying contractors when he was in the private sector. It was like something along the lines of he went to his bank, as a matter of fact, and said, "Hey, guess what? The market crashed. I'm only paying you half." And that's like his great renegotiating skill. And I'm like,
does that
you
work?
can't just not pay what you owe. I mean,
can you try that on your mortgage for your house? Can you just be like, nope, I'm only paying
sucker,
half.
I'm only paying half. Take it or leave it. Oh, you're going to leave it? Okay, I guess I'll do bankruptcy.
No. The thing is, you have to make sure the bank leverages so much that if you go bust, they go bust too. Then they'll help you. That's what Trump did.
Fucking Deutsche Bank. I'm a crowd, and it just bothers the hell out of me that it's all Deutsche Bank at this point.
Oh,
suckers. Behind
every good fascist is a German, right?
Oh, come on, dude. It started in Italy. Christ. But no, and I mean, that's kind of gosh, there's so many scary things about where we are right now. And then maybe we'll talk about how we got there, but it's, even things like that. Like, okay, so the other thing that came out recently were the tax records. Big New York Times post. Of course, a lot of people wrote that off as, oh, what are your sources, blah, blah, blah. They're not really denying it. I think they're the Trump White House is they're quibbling over small numbers or whatever, but they haven't really said, no, that's bullshit. And I don't think the New York Times would just fabricate this thing out of air, right? So again, like, my thing about that whole story is not that he didn't pay any taxes many years, or $750 other years. I mean, that's just how our tax code works. My thing is that he is a poor business person. And that's what I've been saying all along. I mean, nobody wants to fucking believe. Well, half of the people want to believe me, half of the people don't. Okay. But like, you're a poor business person if you lose so much. And you can't just explain that with depreciation. But if you lose so much, you owe practically nothing every year. I mean, his whole reality show thing is what saved his ass financially. And why that concerns me, twofold. A, I mean, if you've got $300 or $400 million coming due in the next 3 or 4 years, right? That kind of compromises you from a national security point of view. And then B, it just shows the same pattern over and over again. So people wanted a business person to run the country, right? Okay, I don't know if the country's ever been run by like a business. I don't know if that's even a good idea, okay? But this is the wrong guy to do that, because the way he runs businesses is he's eternally optimistic beyond any reasonable level. He doesn't want to hear bad news, keeps racking up debt, and then at the end of it, as a business person, he gets to declare bankruptcy and start over again. Us as a country, unfortunately, as the most powerful country on earth for now, I mean, who knows? We can't fucking do that. We can't just write that shit off. We can't declare bankruptcy. So one of the things, and we'll get into more, I'm sure, but that really concerns me. I don't know what you guys think about that, but it's insane to me.
That was my concern from the very beginning, from 2016 and we're 2015 when he first announced that he was running. To this day, I still stand by that it was a publicity stunt that went wrong. Like, I don't think he intended to win.
There's
and I was
a lot of
back
evidence
at
of
old
that,
posts.
actually.
I was looking back at like old Facebook posts and stuff I did from like, the memories of 2016. And I'm like, I was saying, oh, the fix is in. He's just doing this so Hillary can win. And when he ended up winning, he tapped into an underbelly of society that now I was just driving around earlier today, had to run a couple errands. I have never seen the level of cult-like fandom for a politician, if we're going to call him that, ever, that is just blinded. Like, they don't, no matter what he does, when he said the line when he ran it in 2016, when he said, I could kill someone in the streets and get away with it, there's a certain group right now that is out there that is agreed to that are like, he walks on water and does no wrong. And it's just absolutely, it's just a blind, like, if you criticize any sign of criticism, they can't handle it. And then on the opposite side of this, we have a majority of people that are, it could be, the role of Joe Biden could literally be played by anybody right now, how these people look at it. They're just like, we want anyone other than this guy here. And because it goes back to like, being kind of you mentioned my past was sports entertainment, as you called it, I think, or entertainment sports. I mean,
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Trump was involved in that for many, many years, and would financed a couple of the WrestleMania events and stuff like that. And it's
like, beat somebody's ass on one of those.
Oh yeah, we also saw him take a Stone Cold Stunner at one of those too. So good on the president. But it's just one of those, like, I don't get how all these followers, and I'm going to call them followers, they just turn a blind. It's like, he's a terrible businessman. He is. He's never, like, he's bankrupt casinos. And like you said, it came down to the reality TV show deal is really what saved him, and probably was what funded the whole campaign. And I don't know. I'm baffled. I'm truly, like, what this has come to is from years and years of choosing the same old shit. And that's how here we're at.
Well, and I'm going to disagree with that later, but I will add to his business acumen that he does have, I think, 2 office buildings, perhaps in Manhattan or something, that make money continuously.
Yeah, but weren't they his dad's?
Hey, they still make money for him. It was good business for him to keep the stuff that he was handed, right? I digress. Go ahead, Corey.
I don't really have anything to add other than it's a cult. It's a straight up cult, and I'm fucking terrified. And I think that's going to be a theme tonight. Talk about how terrified I am. I mean, there's a reason why I'm not showing my full face on the internet right now. And we'll talk about a story I heard about today, about what's going on up in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, geez,
and
so much
why
stuff.
people should be taking some precautions. because shit's going to pop off and you need to protect yourself if you've had any sort of association with any left-wing movements at all, ever.
And I said in my preview to this show that I'm not going to be that wishy-washy fence sitter sort of diplomatic guy, but I can already feel it welling up in me right now. But let's continue with this. So, I guess one of the other things that frightens me about the time that we're in right now, and maybe this might be something that you're referring to, maybe not, but I've never seen leadership in this country kind of set us up for civil unrest, for civil war, as much as I've seen now. And like none of us, none of you, nobody listening right now, none of us, well, maybe some of you, have really ever lived through that. And you think it couldn't happen now, but Jesus Christ, things are getting to the point where, there is a real possibility that depending on how things go during this election, shit could really hit the fan. Actually, either way the election goes, I think shit could hit the fan. Because you're going to have, you've got all this accusation of fraud and things like that coming from the president, but what if the president wins? Now you've already muddied those waters. You've already, sort of spoiled that. So then these same accusations are going to be coming from the other side. As a, maybe an anarchist at heart and someone who's much more pragmatic now, though, than even maybe a strict libertarian, okay? I still think that having faith in institutions such as elections, is kind of important. And we'll see what happens in Ohio, too, because we've got Frank LaRose, who's our Secretary of State. He's a good dude, actually. I've met him a couple times. I like him. Don't get me wrong. I love the dude. But if things go the wrong way here, and there's no way to say it's just like Democrats, well, what the fuck am I talking about? Anybody who goes against the current power, even if they're from the same party, still gets like labeled a Soros, communist. So whatever. But yeah, a real definite possibility of having civil unrest, which we haven't had in a long, long time, at least not widespread. And who knows? Maybe it'll just be isolated, and we'll bring him back in when he comes in. But Corey, is this related to what you're talking about as far as the Pacific Northwest, or how do you feel about that broadly?
Well, I'll go specific into the story I was going to talk about here in a second. But there's I don't know if you've listened to this podcast. It's called It Could Happen Here. Journalist Robert Evans put it out last year. And the premise, last summer, and the premise was basically the idea that we could have a civil war in the United States based on some of the things that were happening. And throughout the podcast, I listened to it when it originally came out, and I've been listening to it again lately. And a lot of the things that he talked about in the podcast have already, like predictions have already happened. Like with the militias and stuff going on. And
so for people who haven't heard the podcast, such as myself, is this based on like a historical survey, essentially, of how these things happen? Or is he like just doing Nostradamus?
No, he actually reported from the Syrian civil war. So he actually went and traveled. Plus, he reads a lot of history and does a lot of history type podcasts. So it's predictions, but it's predictions based on, just how societies break down and the possibilities of different things that could possibly happen. So, talking about, there's different possibilities, like one being a rural rebellion. And, he does an episode about, if it's a left-wing rebellion and stuff like that. So, it's really interesting. But the thing that really, really is sticking to me is just how radicalized the right wing is becoming, to the point where the story I was going to talk about is there was a patriot group up in the Pacific Northwest that literally, this just broke a few days ago. They're literally like keeping kill lists and amassing weapons and planning on, murdering left-wing activists. Like, and this was uncovered. There were some Antifa activists that like kind of infiltrated. But I mean, the chat logs show like they were going to kill the mayor of Portland and the governor of Oregon. So I mean, this shit's real. Shit's getting real. And I think the thing that bugs me about what's going on right now is no one seems to be seeing it. And I feel like I'm a fucking crazy person, but I mean, it's happening. And I'm not going to say that it's not, and I'm not going to live in denial about it. And leading probably to beyond the point of what we're talking about specifically right this second. And that's part of why I wanted to do this is I think it's really irresponsible to not vote for Biden. I really do. I think that it is a civic duty, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that the Pacific Northwest has a long history of clashes between sort of white nationalists, white separatists, and people who aren't. I mean, this goes back to the 80s and 90s. So what you're saying is it is much more real now than during those times, like let's say during Clinton's first term in office.
Right. Well, that's the thing. The militias organized, but they weren't like actually actively going out. I mean, other than lone wolves, I mean, really all you had was McVeigh. That was really the only big one. I mean, there was other like small scale things, but not like where they're actively planning. They were too smart to do that.
Well, that has happened before. I mean, that has happened before. And maybe it was like 50 to 75 people or something. I mean, what kind of scale are we talking about right now?
I mean, this group, I don't think it was a lot of people, but just the fact that there was one group that was able to organize and get all these weapons and getting ready to go. I mean, they have these huge coalitions. And I mean, that's the thing. We don't know because they're organizing in decentralized fashion. I mean, that's the thing, though. That's the way they've been organizing since the 80s.
Well, which is another information revolution tactic. And that's changed everything now. And I think,
But the difference now is Trump, because Trump enables it. Because Trump gets on a debate stage and says, stand back and stand by.
Yeah.
And like you could say misspoke, but then right after that, he's like, and someone has to take care of these anti-fascist left-wingers. I mean, what the fuck? That's what he was saying. And he was playing it off like he wasn't.
No, I heard it too. So my question is, and I guess it's sort of a rhetorical question from my point of view, and I'll go to you on this first, Jake, but is what's going on right now in the administration right now and all of this right now, is that a symptom of someone who is just evil or, narcissistic or opportunistic? I mean, obviously opportunistic, I'll give you that, and narcissistic, but maybe, or with all of that too, is this more just a sign, sort of a reflection of where we are? Everything that has happened since radio, when the information revolution really started. I'm not going to go all the way back to Gutenberg with this, but I mean, everything has kind of led up to this point, I think. Or do we just have an anomaly? Do we just have an anomaly and somebody who's a bad dude?
I think it's a combination of both. I think he is an anomaly in of that, like, he's not a politician and he's a really bad reality TV star that got elected to be to the highest, who basically
exactly.
But also there is a buildup of a lot of things that took place to get us to this point. I do feel that way. There's a lot of people that we found out through the course of this president's administration that all of a sudden find it okay to come out with bigotry and hatred that are, even if they use it in his name and they say, oh, they think it's okay and it is socially acceptable now. And like the stuff that Corey's talking about earlier up in Portland, that's just frightening and scary. And it's just like, it's a powder keg that I really think that the people that have been in power, I'm not going to go like all super crazy conspiracy on that, but there is something to be said about those who have the money. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think this is the perfect powder keg that's coming together. And I agree with something you said earlier, Nick, that no matter what happens, come November 3rd, it's going to be
or the week after.
The week after, yeah. There's going to be civil unrest because if Trump wins, there's going to be civil unrest. If Biden wins, there's going to be civil unrest. And so it's a scary time, I want to say. Like, I don't have, like, you, Nick, you have kids in this. I don't have kids in this. So it's like, it's one of those where it's like, I look at it and I'm like, man, it's this. And I talked to my parents about this. Even in the past 20 years, this is not the same country that it once was. Everything is about money, corporations, and stuff, and all that stuff.
Well,
but I don't know. It just I feel like the money is more protected than the people.
I agree to an extent, Jake. But what I would come back to is that, sort of this information, or we could even just call it a media revolution or information revolution. They're interchangeable. But I mean, that is what slowly built up to the point where we had social media where, yes, it is about the money, but I don't think it's about the money in the way that people normally would associate it, like, dirty Soros and Coke money, getting people elected. I mean, people poured shitloads of money into elections and lost them. But
Bloomberg.
But it's more about like this.
He won American Samoa, so that was totally worth the millions of dollars.
Totally worth it.
Right.
How come The Rock didn't endorse him?
Right. But yeah, you've got this, this self-perpetuating cycle of money per clicks, money. So they're just a lot of opportunists who took what, people even before like Rush Limbaugh started, and just sort of the sensationalism. And now every schmuck or foreign power who wants to do this can do it. And it's not just right wing. I will say this.
Agreed.
They're just much more successful at it. I've seen the meme many times, like, oh, I wish lefties could meme like we can. I mean, the right wing's got that shit down. But yeah, so you have this ratcheting effect, and it's just gotten to the point where it's driven people to such tribalism that nobody fucking thinks. And that's what really, it drives me crazy right now. Because look, I'm pretty much the least tribal person you'll meet, maybe other than the other two of you here. I mean, I'm a non-joiner. That shit freaks me out. My grandparents lived through World War II. They were poor farmers living in, down Schwabenland, whatever. They didn't want to be involved in any of that. It fucked up our entire lives. They became displaced people. They ended up here. They just wanted to, farm, have their family, live their life. They were non-joiners. I'm a non-joiner. Authoritarianism freaks me out. I don't like any of this stuff. I like the idea, the old idea of America, like the sort of constitutional idea. I think that's pretty sweet. Granted, we haven't followed it in forever. So before anybody out there who may be listening for the first time thinks I'm some kind of fucking communist, I am not. I'm probably the furthest from it, because outside of that fascism stuff, communism is right up there too. That frightens me too. Family experience, hearing the stories.
Yeah.
But we are so tribal right now. It does truly remind me of like a Weimar Republic in Germany. And you had, for folks that don't remember that or haven't read about it, I mean, you had crazy stuff happening after a war. Okay, I guess we don't have that, but we had, COVID, right?
We had a recession too.
Recession.
It took how long to recover from that? That's like a war.
It is, and it's still going on. And so you had a lot of disillusioned people in Germany at that time, in the Weimar Republic, and suddenly you had factions forming in the streets, and they wouldn't go through, the Reichstag to actually legislate this out. They took it to the streets. I mean, there was the beer hall push. There were communists in the streets. There were fascists in the streets. And what it all boiled down to at the end was who was willing to be more violent or who had a greater popular appeal, I guess. I don't know. I mean, the original Nazis were anti-capitalist too, which, rings through to this populist sort of sentiment from the conservatives. I can't even call them that anymore because they resemble nothing of what conservatives.
No, they're just straight up fucking nationalists. That's all they are.
Yeah,
like straight up nationalists.
So it's not
like nationalists.
It's not left and right anymore. It's really morphed quite a bit. But anyway, what you hadn't happened in the Weimar Republic, I mean, it could totally happen here. We're just waiting for some really bad monetary policy to cause hyperinflation and
running up the deficit, and over the past 3 years.
Yeah, like the deficit, like nobody gives a flying fuck about that anymore. I mean, that was like one of the things that I liked about Republicans. I'm like,
oh, come on, though. Republicans have never.
No, I like that they talked about it.
Well, yeah, but they never did anything. They cut taxes, and then just let the deficit go up, and then they cut taxes again, and then they bitch about it when Democrats are in office.
No, you're right. I mean, you got to pay the piper eventually. I mean, you got to figure something out. And that Laffer curve, look, I can't even speak to that. Folks who don't know what the Laffer curve is, it's like there's kind of a sweet spot where taxation goes down and revenue goes up because businesses aren't spending so much on taxation. They're reinvesting in their business, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not discrediting that. It could work out, but we have such a convoluted, fucked up system that I don't even know where to begin. Like, Corey, I don't blame you for not really being a libertarian anymore, because at this point, with how intertangled and messed up things are, I don't even know how you could get to the point where I could, with a straight face, recommend anything that I've recommended in the past.
I think these past 4 years have proven how unattainable it is. And I mean, I'm not saying that I love Democrats, but I'm also saying they don't terrify me as much, and I would feel
less. They don't terrify you; they terrify all those people that were bombed. Under Obama, the drone strikes. U.S. citizens being killed, deporter in chief. I can go on and on. It doesn't really matter. Although I will say, yes, it is much worse right now.
Okay, so what do you look at though? Do you look at bad or fucking pure evil? And we've tried the third party thing, right? That doesn't work.
And Jake has joined us again, and I wanted to get to that.
That doesn't work.
Well, it hasn't worked, and it doesn't work. Jake, what I was saying, I don't know if you caught any of that, is that basically, things are so fucked up and tangled up and convoluted right now. It's hard for me to even get behind somebody like Jorgensen. I mean, A, she's probably not going to win. Okay, cool, whatever. B, okay, so people might get excited about a third-party candidate, especially when the main party candidate sucks so bad. I get that. But it's you have to impart so much foundational information, so much education to explain why, I like the free market liberal system, libertarian system versus, state-run systems. That is such a monumental task. So what you're going to have, and I'm already seeing it, is that people are going to say, oh God, these guys suck. Who's this Jorgensen lady? Oh, you know what? She's pretty cool. Sweet. And then they go to the Libertarian Party website or her website, and they look at the platform, and they're like, holy fuck, you're not going to regulate the environment? You're going to do all this and that and this and that and this and that? And it's okay, I could explain all of those in regular, less frenetic times. If I had time and we could go through a lecture over several weeks for an hour a day, maybe I could build some at least understanding with people who freak out about shit like that. But at this point, that's my concern, is okay, they redirect there for a second and then they're like, wait, she's fucking worse than both of them. And then they flip right back. So that's my dilemma right now. And that's why I think this is sort of a bad time for third parties, despite the sort of intuitive thinking that, if the other two really, really suck this year, it would be a great time for them. I don't know. What do you think?
It is. I mean, I agree with you to a point there. It is a bad time for third parties for the reason of what Corey mentioned earlier, basically using the fear tactic, and of that, unless you vote for Joe Biden,
tactic, or is it real?
I'm not using the fear tactic.
No, I'm not saying you are.
Real.
I'm not saying you are.
I've been
saying
watching
is
very closely over the past 4 years. I don't have Trump derangement syndrome. I think he's done.
I didn't mean to imply that you did.
I know, but I'm just saying, this is legit. Everything that has been predicted to happen has pretty much happened, and I don't think it's going to stop. So I'm sorry. I know you're not saying that. I'm just
It's just one of those things okay, for example, the group that I've encountered the most resistance and downright insults from are Biden supporters. And they're not even Biden supporters, they're just anti-Trumpers. And I have this thing where it's like, I don't know. I don't live my life with the philosophy of I'm anti-something. I'm going to be supportive of something. And I get we're in completely different times. And I get, what's going on in the world right now. But if you look at the numbers of the amount of growth that's gone on in with libertarian candidates, it's grown exponentially in the past 20 years. And with let's face it, I mean, with especially Joe Biden in this situation, I watched the Democratic debates and listened to every other person talk about how he was terrible for this job. And I agreed with them. I don't think he's good for the job. The only thing he has is his name is not Donald Trump. I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't get I don't understand in any other walk of life, in any other job, anything you do, 65 is the retirement age. Okay. We kind of the medium, and we have politicians that stay in forever and ever. I don't want a 77-year-old man running this country. I'd rather have someone in his 40s, 50s, someone that they're better. They're in their prime. Their brain is functioning in their prime. I don't understand. Out of all of the options, that's what they went with. And the people full well that are looking at going I'm not going to vote for him. It's just a senile old man. I've got a feeling that you're going to have a lot of people that once again aren't going to take part of it, or they're going to vote third party, write in somebody completely stupid. Or just not vote out of it's they're going to do the old I'm not going to vote as a protest vote. And I completely disagree. Go vote for whomever you want, but vote. Make your voice heard. And anybody that think I don't like them at the bullying tactics, everybody, and Nick, this, having many previous elections. What did you call him? The previous administration, the something in chief, the
bomber.
Bomber in chief, yeah. It's
Deporter, excuse me.
Yeah, deporter in chief. And then
why do you think they call me Obama? Okay, anyway.
And the 2012 election, everybody was like, your vote, no, you're voting for Obama, and I'm like, no, I'm not. So every election, having voted third party, I've always been told I've always voted for the incumbent in office. And I'm looking at it, I'm going, your argument is anyone but this person, but the person you're picking is horrible. But at the same time, if your argument is anyone but this person, there's no way to rally people around a third-party candidate because, quite frankly, the system isn't set up for that to happen. They'll never let that happen.
Exactly. So, yes.
It's my entire adult life, I feel like I've been somebody that has not been represented. And they say, your elected officials are your representation. No one represents me. Joe Biden will not represent me. Donald Trump doesn't represent me. It's so it's right now. It's okay, what do you want? Do you want hot coals up your asshole, or do you want you want knives down your throat? Pick one. You got to choose.
Right. No, and you're absolutely right. It's not set up for that. And I think that there were maybe there's 1 or 2 states right now that are experimenting with ranked choice voting.
Man,
and I mean that would be
allowing it. Yeah.
That would be
awesome.
Right direction, because, and that's another problem, right? This year, right now, it's not going to happen, and the system is not set up for it, like you just said. I think libertarians, Greens, socialists, whoever, or just a common sense Dwayne Johnson party or Mike Rowe party or whatever you want to call it, whoever, they need to start at the bottom. You can't just jump to president. You got to start at the bottom. You got to get local officials elected. You got to get state officials elected. And then you could start putting some real momentum behind the idea of reforming the whole election system, which is what will ultimately save us if we can be saved. Right. I think ranked choice voting, things like that are really important, because then it's like you have that ranked choice voting and it takes away that argument of, well, if you vote for Joe Jorgensen, that's a vote for Trump. I mean, so if you could pick I've got my 1, 2, and 3 choices, that totally takes that away, because if your number 1 doesn't win, it goes to number 2. So like for me, like maybe I don't love Joe Jorgensen, but let's just say like I want her to win. So I'll pick her first, but she gets like 2% of the vote. Then my next one is Biden, because that's like my pragmatic vote, right? Because I'd rather face him. I'd rather him be my enemy than Trump. So I vote.
Like your logic. I respect your logic on that.
And so then
it's a sound logic.
Yeah, and I mean that's my logic right now. And folks, I posted it the other day. This is no news to anybody, but that's at this very moment, and it could change, but that's kind of how I plan on going, because I got to pick the person that I would feel better going against. Like, I'm going to oppose whoever's president. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the case for the entirety of my life, because I just don't agree. Like, what it takes to be popular enough and raise enough money to be president are not things I like.
Ridiculous.
So it's never going to be what I want. But maybe as I get older now, I'm starting to realize I got to pick my battles, and I got to think strategically, who would I rather be against? And I say this now, but at the moment, because they're out of power, and this like happened with the anti-war protest all the time, Corey, and you remember this. Now that they're not in power, it's kind of easier to get along with Democrats. But as soon as they get in, it's going to be super hard to get along with them, and I'll have more in common with the Republicans. It's like we're like, that the prettiest girl in the bar. I don't know. That's a bad analogy.
I want to say this. Can I explain why this election is different?
Sure.
Because I'm with you. This is the most important election in your lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
Lesser of two evils. This is different. We're not dealing with like conservatives right now. We're dealing with nationalists. I mean, they are diametrically opposed to, I think, anything that we agree with. This is an election so that we can continue on. I had a phrase for it, and I can't remember exactly what I was going to say. This is an existential election. I honest to God think if Donald Trump wins, that this country won't exist in 4 years. I mean, I already said that with coronavirus, and
yeah, I remember you.
I think that's where we're heading, and I think he's going to win, and I think that's going to be it.
I'm not quite that dire, because I don't know that. That's a possibility, but
he's fucking pulling people off the streets, man. Like,
it's a possibility.
He owes $400 million to Lord knows who. Like, yeah.
No, it's a bad situation. And the bad thing is that there are absolutely no checks and balances at the moment. I mean, I guess one could argue if there was a balance.
Fight another day. That's the term I was thinking of. Fight another day election.
I get it. No, I totally get that. I mean, but if there was a shift in the Senate, I suppose there could be some checks and balances again. But you'd still, let's say the Senate had a Democrat majority, you'd still face that exact same situation of, voter fraud accusations and things like that. I mean, they'd almost be paralyzed to do anything just from a standpoint of civil unrest. I mean, I guess we are at the nexus right now of what is bad about the information revolution and media. And look, a lot of other revolutions that have occurred, I don't know enough about the agricultural revolution to speak about it, but I can say this about the industrial revolution. I mean, you've got Upton Sinclair. I mean, you've got these stories about the beginnings of the industrial revolution when it was just going nuts and there was no real norms and things were just progressing so fast that, people just did whatever, and there were kids working in meat packing plants and falling in, and next thing you know, they're fucking sausages. So I mean, it happens, and we got through it, and it normalized. And, you know, an argument I heard recently, I'm a big fanboy of Dan Carlin. I'm not going to hide that. But he said, you know, the thing that's different about this is that the very nature of this revolution is that it's built upon innovation. Look, you could say the very same thing about the Industrial Revolution. I mean, it's just that rapid innovation, that massive change in society. We've never done this before. We don't know how to deal with it. And we're learning as we go. So, yes, it might be the end of us, Corey. It could be. But I'm somewhat optimistic that we will figure out a way to get through this very turbulent time, and maybe we won't turn kids into fucking sausages anymore.
I'm kind of intrigued.
But we have nuclear weapons.
I'm kind of intrigued to know what Corey's approach is, what he thinks is. You mentioned that, you know, if Trump gets reelected, the country won't be here in 4 years. So where will we be living and what will be happening? I'm just curious as to what your take on that is. Are we going to be rounded up?
The landmass will exist, but that's the thing; it's uncertain. You know, who will they round up? Rounding people up, yes, certainly that will happen. Who will they round up? That's really hard to tell.
And like, you know, there's this,
they're already having concentration camps with the kids, you know, and that was I feel like a test bed. I mean, I know it sounds paranoid, but like all of the worst case scenarios, like think back to before Trump was elected and think about what you thought the possible worst case scenarios would be. Has not everything actually been worse than that? At least for me, I never in a million years would have thought it would be this bad. And I think if he doesn't have to be elected again, or, you know, like a second term, without any sort of checks. Good God.
There's a thing, an argument of people that have said out there, like if, you know, Biden is elected, that he's going to institute martial law for the sake of enforcing the COVID, which I think is just I don't see that happening, but I also could see this. I've heard some Biden supporters say that Trump's going to do the same thing. So there's other people out there that have kind of similar sentiments and concerns that you've expressed, and it's just things that, you know, you never thought you'd see in the United States of America. Going back to my point earlier, I was talking to my dad about this.
But who has paramilitaries in the streets? I'm sorry, I have to interrupt.
No, yeah, right.
But which
the argument
side
of what would happen, or what could happen, or the argument versus what is happening. And like, you know, we see these stupid commercials, you know, like this is the fear, no police, all this stuff. No, the footage you're using is right now. It's like, how could it be that if it's already that? And I'm like, that's the point where I just throw my hands up and go, what the hell? Okay. I mean, it gets frustrating for someone. And Nick, you know this. You were the first one in 2002 that really introduced me to, like, you know, the outside, like, third-party libertarian policies and stuff like that. And even if we're not, like, I don't consider. You say I'm sorry. I don't believe me. After I went to one meeting with them, I don't consider myself with a capital L, but with a lowercase L. And
yes,
I don't really associate with. I've always identified as an independent. I lean.
Yeah, you got to meet Mr. Mackey when you came along with me.
I did. Yeah, that was quite that.
It's got to be by now.
And none of our cell phones worked, and it was like, so this is how I die, huh? These crazy people. And the whole thing with them, even back then, this was what, 2010, whatever, I forget, 12. They were like, you know, all they wanted to do was be the Republicans, and they were like, you know, oh, if we can get the Republic, dude, no. You need to be something different. This country is screaming out for something, especially now more than ever. The most popular candidate is Noda. It's none of the above.
Is
That's
it?
who people.
Because I don't know what the polling is on this, and I don't have the information. And I haven't seen a lot of polling on like who would prefer. Now, after the debate, maybe if they did a poll, it would say, you know, a lot of people prefer.
That's the one I was referring to. There was a poll that was done, and at the end of it, they said that it was like 48% picked none of the above.
But people are so frickin' tribalized. I don't know, like, much that could snap them out of that. You know, I really don't. But interesting what you said about the LP, like back in the day, because that was like when Corey and I had our run-in with little Trump, as I used to like to call him, Mr. Root, who has a show on that
Oh,
one news network or whatever the hell it's called now. Yeah, I
Oh,
texted him recently.
man,
I
that's some
wanted to-
scary shit right there. That one news network. Yuri sends me a bunch of stuff that links
my
and stuff that's on there. Oh my god, is
But
that like that's
but they're-
frightening?
But they're just
And
the
then
most.
there's multiple networks like that now.
Yeah, exactly. They're just the most successful of networks like that. You know what's crazy shit too is that things like InfoWars, have become basically mainstream now. I mean, even without Alex Jones making all the money off of it. I mean, there's a million other things that are just like that, and it just goes to show. God, my greatest wish when we got the internet. I've always been a nerd. Okay. I love the library. I love books. I had the Encyclopedia Britannica. I used to read that shit. I love information. And I was so excited about having all of the information basically in the world or a good portion of it at my fingertips. And I was like, this is going to be so fucking great. People are just going to be able, like, you got a question, you can get it answered. And it's been the exact fucking opposite. Like, so, okay, a poll real quick of two people here. Do you think
Very
people
scientific.
very scientific?
This represents the entire country.
Yes,
Our
it
poll
does.
of two.
Do you think that people are smarter and more savvy today? In general, I know in some ways, or do you think people are morons, more or less today?
I think it depends on the person. I know that's a cop-out answer, but I really feel that way. The internet has
I'm
some great
talking numbers
values.
here,
Like,
Jake. We talking,
okay, well,
more than 50%. Let's put more than 50%.
I would say more than 50% are dumber because of the internet.
Can't
because
reason and have no logic.
They don't seek out the information. They don't want to find out stuff that's going to educate them. People, I've said this saying for years. People will believe what they want to believe regardless of facts, and they will find those, going back to your comment on tribalism, that will back up what they believe. Doesn't
And
matter if it's
bingo,
true or
dollar
not.
signs. Dollar signs, dude. That's what it's all about. I want to find things that confirm my confirmation bias, right?
Exactly.
And that's
Confirmation
big
bias.
money. Because that makes me feel good. It makes me feel good when people believe what I believe.
And there's also no accountability with the internet in of that, where people can go on, they go onto these things and they do online cyberbullying and they attack people. And it's like, you don't agree with me, so I'm going to tell you 500 ways why you're a piece of shit. And it's like, okay, I disagree with you. I said this earlier at the beginning of this broadcast. I disagree with so many people, because of my background, I don't really Twitter that much, only because I think it's kind of stupid. I don't get it. But I do the Facebook and
I'm
the Instagram.
stupid. That's why I don't do it, apparently.
I don't know. I never got into the whole thing of it. I mean, It is what it is. But I think it comes back to this, especially through ours, before Facebook and all that was around, when I was doing my MMA background, we had a message board, and on the message board, people were in, you created whatever you want your character name to be, and then you went on there and you talked shit about people, and it was constantly, and built fights, and it was this whole we actually ended up getting a television deal on Sports Time Ohio because we showed them our message board, and they didn't care what they were saying.
That's Sports
They just saw.
It
was sports entertainment, but they saw that it was engaging. They saw there was an engagement, and the people right now, the only thing they care about is the engagement part. So it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It doesn't matter. People can throw out 100% bullshit stuff. I've seen so much bullshit things that get thrown out there where I'm looking at, okay, I have a rule where this gets some people, if I see somebody who shares something of a celebrity that died multiple years ago and it's not even on the same day, you get unfollowed for 30 days. Unless I don't know you, then you just get deleted. Because it's you didn't take the 2 seconds to click. And now the link on this, and then we have this with we have this in politics. People are like, oh my God, so-and-so said this. Oh my God, so-and-so said that. Nobody reads it. They just send it out there, and then people are getting dumber as a result of it.
Right.
Well,
they just read the headlines. They don't read the article.
Exactly. The old saying used to be, if it bleeds, it leads, right? And that, if we break that down, because it's not all about massacres and shit today, but it's if it bleeds, it leads, because stories of trauma and horrible things lead to emotional reactions and draw people towards it. Now, those used to be stories when people had an attention span longer than a goldfish or a gnat. When you would actually read a story, now it's just a fucking headline and a picture. So I got your vote there, Diggs. Corey, what do you think the state of human reasoning and logic is these days. Go ahead.
It's terrible, but I don't think it's any different than it's ever been. People are fucking stupid. Most people are fucking stupid.
What an
Incredibly
elitist thing to say.
No, it's true though. I denied that for years and years and years, but I've come to that conclusion. And the unfortunate part is because of the internet, they
find more stupid people.
Well, they are easily manipulated by people who are trying to take advantage of them.
They're marks.
And you know, I don't think there's anything. It's not a moral statement. I don't think there's anything wrong with being dumb. Like that's not saying anything bad about them.
No, me neither.
Not everyone can be intelligent. Not everyone has the cognitive capability for that.
Sure.
Plus, we have a lot of issues in the educational system. But
sure, and there's lots of different reasons why people have different reasoning and logical faculties, whether they're born with it or they grew up in a shitty situation or whatever. I mean, there's totally, Corey. I'm sorry, I just had to clarify that. I'm not getting down. Like, I'm not downing people who might not be as smart. It's just, it's like, I don't know. Maybe there's a lot more of them than I ever realized before. I mean,
people are terrible. Persons are fine. Like, persons are okay. Like, individual people, mobs are horrible because it's like we talked about that a long time ago. It's that mob mentality. People, there's people have this desire to want to fit in and belong, so they'll go along with things. Or they'll jump on board. It's like when we see now videos of the old man falling down the street and there's 16 kids videotaping it and not one person helping the guy. It's like, oh, I want to be a part of this. Oh my God, look, point and laugh kind of thing.
It's that, and I think that probably just is spurred on by the popularity you get from posting something, then it gives you those endorphins from your likes and whatever. But the other part of the mob thing that's scary is that people, and this has been documented at least since like the 1700s. Now, a questionable source like Gustave Le Bon or whatever wrote extensively on this, but like people, and he was observing, I believe, the French Revolution, but people who normally wouldn't do something, once they're caught up in a mob and a riot and a crowd, and granted, like you said, Corey, there's a lot of right-wing militias and violence, and they fall prey to this too. There are folks on the left that fall prey to this too, and maybe there's provocateurs amongst all of them that are just pushing this, but that's all it takes, because when you have that mob mentality and that crazed energy in the mob, someone who's a church marm would never think of breaking a Starbucks window or hurling a brick through a police car window. But once they all get together and they get all, it just changes people, and it's a terrifying.
That sounds like a great time.
That does actually sound like fun, but there was a great documentary on PBS. It was about the blackout of the blackout in New York City of the late 1970s, and it showed the people down in the Bronx, and how everybody started breaking into, like, people started looting stores. Well, after a while, normal everyday people that would never do such a thing all of a sudden are caught on camera. Mind you, it's the 70s, so they're walking right in front of a big ass camera, stealing stuff out of there because they're looking at it as the mentality of, I need to take care of my family. And it was in the poorest of neighborhoods where they devoured themselves as a result of it. And I think
I have an interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
Go. I just one of those, like, the take on that. It's very similar. I think of, it's like they will. It's more in line with like lower income, that that mob mentality, that it's like, oh shit, I need this to survive. You don't think so?
No, I don't think so at all.
Retort.
I will retort. I don't think it's about necessity. I think it's about what becomes permissible. Yeah. Because everything
that's kind of the point I was saying on that. They did it because it was like they felt it was okay because everybody else was doing it.
Yeah, let me clarify that then, I guess. Maybe I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think it becomes permissible to do things because what we do and what we don't do is based on our own sense of ethics and morality and whatever we believe, right? But it's also to a large extent for a lot of people, maybe not myself. Look, I'm not going to be holier than thou, but I am right now. Do that, I don't think, but I've never been in that situation. But yeah, a lot of what people do is based on what they think is socially acceptable. I mean, that's all of culture, society, nations. I mean, it's just what do we think is acceptable, right? So like when you're in a mob and suddenly everybody starts doing something, like your mom used to ask you, if Tommy and all his friends jumped off a bridge, would you do it too?
I always have a fun response to that. They'd say, if everybody else jumped off the bridge, would you jump too? I'm like, well, let me think about this. How deep is the crater? Is there water on the bottom? Because if everybody's jumped, I'm just going to land on top of a pile of bodies and I'll be fine. And my parents were like, shut the hell up. You do not understand what I'm saying.
There are starving kids in China. Well, then send it to them. That was my response. But anyway, go ahead. Corey, I'm sorry. You had a point.
Oh, no.
My response was, there's starving kids in Akron.
No, it's funny. You mentioned that, but there can be creation from destruction, because that event that you're talking about, Jake, is credited for hip hop. Like they stole the turntables and shit, and that started that whole subculture. So you do have to ask sometimes, is creative destruction, and is there positive things that can come out of the mob mentality? I'm just throwing it out there because it's not impossible.
And I'm glad you bring that up, because if you look at the amount of destruction that's gone on in this country in the past few months alone, as a result of various events that have taken place, I really hope that on the other side of this, that something comes out where it's more about unity and finding commonality, as opposed to the focusing so much on what people disagree upon. I mean, there was a point in time where you could not. There was a point in time where you could not be supportive of police officers and also supportive of Black lives. They were like, you can't do both, and it's like, yeah, you can, because I support both. I don't think people should be killed for the color of their skin. I don't think people should be racial profiled for that result. At the same time, I don't think that all. I think, and I hate when someone says bad apples, because that's just bullshit. That's just a bullshit cop out. I do think there's a lot of times where
what you did there.
What's that?
You said cop out. I'm sorry.
Oh, I did, yeah. I think that's it's a bullshit excuse on things. Some people, quite frankly, whatever your job is, you're just an asshole. And if you have a job where you're in power and you're an asshole, that's 17 times worse. Thus, where we're at now, where your point, Nick, at the beginning of it with 45, it's like, yeah, you took a guy, all of a sudden you gave him pretty almost the modern equivalent of omnipotent power here. All of a sudden, you went from a reality TV show star to, oh my God, you're the most powerful. You could end the world if you wanted to.
Yeah, this is the dude who has his finger on the trigger, and he's already floated the idea of nuking hurricanes. Just saying. So
if we get a Sharknado out of that, I'm okay with it. That's if our country's ending, I want that to be our apocalypse.
So. And
that's better than a lot of alternatives.
True.
And that's why this is more important than a lot of people think. But going back to something you said, Corey, about creative destruction, I found that interesting because, I mean, that is the mantra. And I'm not going to call it like Silicon Valley at this point. It's not like I hate the identity politics of it. It's not like a white establishment. It's like it's an upper class establishment. It is an elite establishment. And the idea of creative destruction has been praised there. Disruption, creative destruction. And I didn't think about this before, but I like what you said and I want people to think about this. It's like, maybe we don't need to be so pessimistic, because almost all of the wonderful things that we have, like throughout history, were disruptive and came through some sort of creative destruction or destruction and then creativity.
Isn't that literally the entire history of this country?
It's the entire history of
the world. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Civilization.
Actually,
it's a cycle of life. Things get destroyed and it's reborn.
I mean, it happens like even beyond humanity in life. I mean, it happens physically. So, but On the flip side, not to be a Debbie Downer here, but sometimes, things get wiped out in that whole equation. So, I don't
It's
know.
a gamble,
History is written by the winners.
Well, that too.
but it's a gamble.
It is. Can I throw out
And
another
that-
cliche?
Yeah.
I don't remember one now, but no, you're absolutely. I agree.
It is what it is.
It is
The
what
early
it is.
bird catches the worm.
Takes one to know one.
We could do the rest of the show just doing this,
We could.
and we'd be more informative than the presidential debate everybody watched.
Yeah, let's just spend the next 53 minutes just talking over each other. We could just read text messages.
Yeah, whatever.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No, you.
I think we've covered a lot of ground tonight. I think we've had a perfect length right now, guys. I think we are getting to a point where I don't have much more to say because I gotta rewatch. I gotta think about these things some more. I know
I'm not
both.
gonna lie. I got some lamb waiting for me to eat in the kitchen. So
I can tell you were. So, yeah, and I don't know. I think I like having a show with you guys and everybody else we've ever had on the show. Honestly, I would have any of them back in a heartbeat. But I think what's cool about you guys is that you're like me in the fact that you deliberate about things before you talk about them. And I think that if we do continue this show and we keep going with it, I mean, we obviously it's spontaneous and we kind of riff and whatever. But I think more or less everything that's been said has been deliberated about, has been thought about. That's why we don't do this. God, if you had to do a show like this every single night, it would just, I don't blame your Rush Limbaughs and people like that of the world. How fucking hard would that be to fill that time every day if you didn't just harp on the exact same things with knee-jerk reactions? But folks, take a step back before you respond to anything. Think about things. Take a deep breath. Maybe even step away from social media, which is how you're seeing us. So, maybe in a week
irony.
yeah. To when we have another one, you'll coincidentally get back on. But I really appreciate anybody who's listening to this now or listens to the tape, as it were, giving my age away. The archive, whatever you call it. Corey, Diggs, do you have any final words tonight?
Be good
Vote
to
for
each
Joe
other.
Biden. Vote for Joe Biden. For the love of God.
Love each
Register to
other and
vote.
be good to each other.
And vote for Joe Biden.
Be good for Joe Biden is what I got out of
For
that.
the love of God. He's terrible.
Vote for Joe.
Yeah.
And I'll leave it at that. Vote for Joe.
Well, that's like pro-life choice, my old favorite phrase.
Pro-life choice. Yeah, right away.
Liston penned that, and that is fucking genius. Anyway, guys, that's a whole nother subject. We're not going to get into that tonight. Anyway, this has been the Von Akron Show number 22. I really do appreciate everybody joining and listening. If you guys really like it, let us know, and maybe we'll do another one. And maybe you can even be on if you're interesting, which I'm sure you are. Anyway, good night.
Probably not.